Hello everybody, welcome to the Great Exhibition Road Festival. What a fantastic day it has been here at Imperial College, and it is wonderful as ever to be here in person with you all. So thank you so much to everybody who's come here, and also to all of you tuning in at home. And it has been a wonderful day, as I say. It is the first time that we've brought back the Great Exhibition Road Festival to in-person events. And so it's been wonderful to just sort of mix and mingle and sort of see all the amazing things that have been happening across all the organizations. We are at Imperial College, as I say, and we have got a fantastic session coming up, which is called Soundtracking the Rainforest. And it's going to be a really immersive experience, because I think it's going to be very much about getting into the rainforest of Costa Rica. And we've got some fantastic speakers here today as well. So I'm going to ask them to very quickly introduce themselves. So I've got Jenna here with me right now. So Jenna, if you don't mind.
Hi, my name's Jenna. I'm a researcher at Imperial College London, and I'm in the last couple of weeks of my PhD using acoustics to look at what happens when we change the landscape, and specifically looking at the spider monkey in Costa Rica.
Thank you. And then dialing in, we've got two guests as well who are going to introduce themselves now.
Hi everyone, I am Louise Gear, and I'm an artist and curator based in Margate, and I'm a co-director of Super Collider. In my art practice, I use sound, photography, moving image, sculpture, and installation. The themes of my art and curatorial practice are the deep time history and deep time future of our planet and astronomy. As well as being a director of Super Collider, I'm also a director of Lumen, an art collective based on astronomy and light. Pale Blue Dot Collective, an art collective which tries to bring a cosmic perspective to our feelings of the natural world, and Print Science, a project which explores historical books about astronomy.
Hello everybody, my name is John Hooper. I'm an artist and photographer. I live in Margate in Kent, having recently moved from London, where I started my career as an editorial photographer. As well as photography, in the last 6 years, I've been working with sound recording and sound design. This includes recording the natural sounds around me using hydrophones, shotgun mics, and contact mics, which I make myself in our studio in Margate. I am a co-director of Pale Blue Dot Collective and Print Science with Louise. In 2004, I set up Land Sounds as a way to differentiate my image making from my sound recording.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to hand over for the presentations now, but before I do, I just need to say to the audience at home, if you have any questions at any stage, please do just feed them through. They'll come straight to us, and I'll be able to put them to our speakers during the Q&A session. For those of you here, of course, you just need to put up your hand during the Q&A section, and we'll be able to include your question. But I now hand over. So a big round of applause and welcome to our speakers.
Thank you very much. So I am going to introduce Super Collider, and then we'll talk a little bit about the artwork. So Super Collider was, next slide please. Super Collider was formed in 2006 by Chris Heatherall, who's a pop science journalist. Myself and Melanie King came on as directors in 2014. Next slide, please. We curate events, exhibitions, workshops, residencies, and ask to commission artwork. Some highlights that we've had recently have been creating the Micro Museum of Sleep for Bumpus and Pa and Citizen M Hotel, which was an installation that included several artworks as well as audio recordings of scientists. We've also created workshops and talk series at different venues across London and the UK. Some of our favourite artists that we've worked with over the years have been Liz West, Lillian Lynn, Caroline Culberson, Julia Hill, and many more. We've curated many science-based talk series. A couple of favourites of mine have been Cassini, A Spectacular End with Professor Michelle Doherty, and The Edge of Sky with Dr. Roberto Trotta, who I'm sure you know very well. We have done lots and lots of different pop-up astronomy events at places like the Ace Hotel, the Collective, Second Home, Woodbury Wetlands, Soho Farmhouse, and Babington House. During these pop-up astronomy clubs, we've seen things like Through the Telescopes, with Pool Hill of Serious Astronomy, we've looked at things like the Moon, Jupiter and its moons, Saturn, Venus. We've done meteorite spotting and looked at globular clusters. We've also looked at the sun through a special filter on some of Paul's telescopes. Paul's enthusiasm and depth of knowledge invites us all to see the universe in a new light. Most recently, we have set up a program of online events called Super Science, and so far we have done 15 of these online events, and you can find a library of them on our website under Super Science Library. Some of the highlights have been working with the Turner Contemporary with artist Amel Tulunda and the wonderful astronomer Paul Hill. We also curated an event called the Margate Science Festival with Faith and Strangers, and we had Robert McFarlane, Timothy Morton, and artist Flora Bowden, which was really fantastic. Okay, next slide, please. At the moment, we are currently based at Spaces Studios in Ramsgate, where we're doing a year-long climate breakdown residency. The residency is looking at climate-related issues facing the area of Thanet, which is where Melanie and I live, in the UK. During the residency, we're working on a project called Submerged Landscapes, which is building on Melanie's recent mural commission by the same name. We plan to document the landscape in different formats, including casting, sound recordings, and photography. And the residency will culminate in an immersive installation that will be exhibited in Ramsgate next year. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. We have a publication called 10, which follows the first 10 years of Super Collider projects, includes lots of beautiful photography. Some of it is by John Hooper, and you can find out more about it on our website. Okay, next slide, please. With this project, we worked with John Hooper and also Dr. Steve Aishman on the artwork. So I'm going to read out Steve Aishman's biography. Dr. Steve Aishman graduated from Princeton with a BA in astrophysics in 1997. He received his MFA from the School of the Museum of Fine Arts and Tufts University, Boston, in 2001, and his PhD from the Royal College of Art in 2020. Most recently, Aishman served as the Dean of Academic Services at Savannah College of Art in Atlanta. He has received numerous awards for his work, and most recently had solo shows at the Pinnacle Gallery Savannah and the JCC AC in Hong Kong. His work is included in the collections of the Museum of Fine Art Houston, the Boston Atheneum, Boston Center of Arts, the Dorrigo Art Center in Dorrigo, Argentina, among others. Okay, and now we're going to go on to Jenna's talk.
Hi everyone. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the science behind what inspired the video that you're going to see today. Okay, so I just wanted to provide a little bit of food for thought first. We won't go into this in too much detail, but why should we even bother conserving forests? It seems to be a question that does come up quite a bit. Not only do they provide a home for wildlife, but they do also provide a home for hundreds of thousands of people. There are many people around the globe that are relying on forests for shelter and food. Also, they provide a lot of products for us. A lot of our foods, a lot of our medicines, and a lot of things we use in our daily lives all come from the forests. Ooh. So I just wanted to show you some of the lovely animals that we're actually trying to protect while we're working in the rainforests. So all these photos, they're all photos that I've taken while I've been in the rainforest. And you can see we have an absolutely amazing amount of beautiful creatures there. So even though I'll be talking mostly about the spider monkey today, I just wanted to show you some of the amazing wildlife that you can see there and that we're trying to protect. So again, I won't go into too much detail on this, just a bit of food for thought for questions later maybe. What are some of the threats to forests? Well, I think we all know one of the main ones is agriculture. So products such as beef, palm oil, soy, logging as well, all the furniture that we use, the wood has to come from somewhere. Climate change, which we can talk a little bit about later. Oil and gas production for the cars that we drive, for our energy, mining, all the precious metals that we're mining for in our phones and other electronics, and all the roads that are built in the area to actually get all these products from A to B. So I'll just introduce the area that I work in. So I work in a place called Costa Rica. A lot of people don't seem to know where this is. So I've put up a little map at the top that you can see up here. So this is Costa Rica, and it's in Central America, sandwiched between Panama and Nicaragua. And then this tiny little piece of land here is called the Osa Peninsula, and this is where I work in Costa Rica. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, Costa Rica is an incredibly biodiverse country. It's said to hold over 5% of all the wildlife on Earth, and it covers just a small percent of the Earth's surface. And this little peninsula here, the Osa Peninsula, covers just 5% of Costa Rica, but houses 50% of all its wildlife. So if we're going to protect somewhere on Earth, I think this little peninsula here is one of the places that we should be looking at protecting. So this map here, it's called a land use map, and all the different colors represent different land uses. So all of the dark green is very nice, old, untouched forest. The lighter green is a bit more degraded secondary forest. And then the red that you can see is all palm oil. Grasslands and teak plantations are in orange and yellow, and then the urban areas are in black. And we have mangroves and wetlands in blue and purple. And you can see there's almost 400 white dots on there. And all of these white dots were recording locations where I had audio recorders across the whole peninsula. And what I was doing is recording the sounds of the rainforest throughout my PhD. And what we were trying to do is find out, we had them in all these different land uses, close to roads, far away from roads, and we were trying to find out what happens to the acoustics of the forest, and so the wildlife, when we destroy these forests and when we put structures in, such as roads and buildings. So the first question that I was trying to answer is, can wildlife survive without native forests? And this question has been answered in other ways before, but what we wanted to find out is what happens to the acoustics. So the more sounds we hear in a forest and the more different sounds, we know the more wildlife and the more different species we had. So we wanted to find out, if we destroy our forests, what happens to the acoustics? And I think they say a picture can tell 1,000 words, and I don't even know if I need to give much explanation to these pictures. So if you look at the black boxes, you can see for each box, we've got time along the bottom. So this is around the time of the dawn chorus in each habitat. And then up the side, we have frequency, so the different pitches that all the animals call in. Now, the more colors and the more lines in the box means more wildlife. So you can see instantly our lovely, pristine, old-growth forest. Each color in each line represents animals calling. So you can see how much wildlife we have here. And then we move to secondary forests here, and you can see there's still a lot going on, but not as much. So when we destroy the forests and then we let them grow again, the wildlife does come back, but not as much. And then you can see here, this is a teak plantation, and this is a palm plantation. Now, what you can see here, there is colors and lines on the screen, but they don't cover the entire spectrum of the frequency, and there's not as many of them. So what we've got in these areas is an extreme loss of wildlife and only a few species left. And then down at the bottom, I'll just explain briefly. So this is what's called an acoustic fingerprint of the forest. But then what we did is we analyzed this further, and we wanted to really see what was going on. And these ones at the bottom is a full 24-hour period. And we all know about the dawn and dusk choruses. And actually what's happening is in the forests, so in the primary forests and the secondary forests, we have these lovely dawn and dusk choruses. When we move into teak plantations, we lose that a little bit. And then in palm plantations, we're losing it completely. So from this, we were able to build up a complete picture of what was going on in those forests, and then by listening to the recordings even further, we could actually tell what wildlife we were losing. Okay. So I just want to tell you about another project now. So that was the first project we were working on. And then the second project was all about the spider monkey. Now, years ago in Costa Rica, 40, 50 years ago, the spider monkey covered the entire country. It lived everywhere. But it was hunted to extinction, near extinction, and it was surviving just in a tiny population in this national park here called Corcovado National Park. So what the government did, the government in Costa Rica have been very good about protecting areas and building back forests. So what they then did is they designated this light grey area here to say, okay, well, we need to protect more forest and build back the forest so the spider monkey populations can repopulate the rest of the country again. And they even designated another national park over here to try and connect it even further. But what's happened 40 years later is that the spider monkeys, so the wildlife officers think in the country, are still stuck in this area and nobody knew why. And it's 40 years, 50 years later, so they should have been able to repopulate by now. So it was my job to come in and look at why were they still stuck in this small area. And then from that, we can then look at solutions to solve this. So this is what we found. We listened to the recordings from all of these 400 sites, and then we actually found where the spider monkeys were and where they weren't. So you can see all of the pink ones is where I didn't find them, and all of the white ones is where we found them. So you can see the prediction of the wildlife department was actually correct. So here's our national park around here, and they have managed to disperse a little bit all around here, but they're stuck for some reason around here. So we then looked further into what was actually causing that. And you can see here, I've actually put this little map in the corner just as a reference. But these two maps, so this map on the left-hand side, it's a map of the roads. So the red roads are the big paved roads, lots of cars, lots of traffic. And then the yellow ones are all secondary roads. So they're all made from gravel. So there's not as much activity on them. And then this map on the right-hand side here, every little black dot is a house or a building. And the background is actually forest or non-forest. So we've colored these areas. Green is forest and blue is non-forested areas. So you can see this is where they end, and you can see exactly what's here. There's a big road running across here, and there's houses and there's non-forested areas. And we actually found that the spider monkey wouldn't go anywhere near palm plantations, teak plantations, grasslands. They didn't like going near buildings. They'd go close to our secondary roads, but they wouldn't even go within a kilometre of primary paved roads. So instantly, we knew that we had a problem. And we knew that if we wanted to get the spider monkeys from here where they are to be able to disperse to the rest of Costa Rica through this national park, we have this big road in the way, lots of other roads, houses, and areas of non-forest. So using this information, we can then start to work on solutions. So this is a map that we've produced for the government. And this map is called a habitat suitability map. And you can see all the green around here. This is all suitable habitat. Everything that's green is something that the spider monkey could use. So you can see the national parks, absolutely perfect. And then as we get darker, yellows, oranges, reds, it becomes more unsuitable. So when you take an area that can actually look quite suitable originally based on the forest cover, and then you break it down into this, you can actually see how many barriers you've got. And then from this, we can then look at solutions like building bridges over roads, restoring palm plantations and teak plantations. And we went one further step for the government, and then we said to them, okay, well, you've got this huge area. Where's the best place to focus on? So if you're going to focus your efforts and your time and your money, where should you look at? And so this is when we designed this little corridor here. So this is called a wildlife corridor. And if the Costa Rican government want to put in the least amount of time and money to get our spider monkeys from A to B, this is the path that they should be really focusing on. Okay, and that's it. Thank you.
Hello, I'm going to explain a little bit about how I was brought in by Superglider to work on the film. I was asked to work with Superglider to create a soundscape for Jenna's research project using the sounds she had recorded in Costa Rica. I was very excited to get started, especially after hearing the sound of the animals and the landscapes. With Superglider, I spent a long time going through the sound files that Jenna supplied us with. We picked out sounds with different animals in and found the best section of the different forest areas, which we thought were the most interesting. The sounds Jenna had recorded in the rainforest and the plantations of Costa Rica were both wonderful and chilling. We began by laying out the individual sections of the forest into 5 chapters, starting in the densely populated natural forests, then into the plantations. We went back and forth, finishing in the untouched forest. The untouched forest's natural animal sounds really stand out against the desolate plantations. To enhance the feeling of loss, we used manipulated sounds of the animals to create a sense of ghostliness in the plantation areas of the soundtrack. One of the reasons Superglider asked me to help them on this project was because of previous work of sound recording I had done manipulating natural sounds using a program called Audacity. We changed the sound's tempo and pitch, making something natural but otherworldly. Once we had finished the sound, we passed the files over to Steve to start the data realization. He has asked us to explain his process by reading out the following paragraph.
The computer program used for biodiverse Earth was written in processing to visualize any stream of data. In this case, the sound files of rainforest noises were inputted into the program, and the program mapped circles based on the type, frequency, and duration of species-specific sounds. This program was designed to receive real-time inputs so it could be deployed to map any live data streaming, including live sounds in the jungle. In this way, the images produced by the program differ from an animation, where a human typically draws an illustration based on recorded sounds. The real-time output of the computer was recorded off the computer for the final artwork.
We used some of the stunning photographs Jenna had taken in Costa Rica's forest to create a color palette for the film. Superglider wanted the visuals to be meditative and bring forth ideas of the forest. We chose the circles to represent the link between astronomy and the deep time history of our Earth. We want people to take away their own experiences from this film. Using different colors for the different animals made it possible to create a key so we can easily identify the animals you are hearing. So coming up, we're going to show you 2 different sections of the AV piece. What we'd like you to do is really listen and look to see which animals you can hear in which forest and which type of forest is in the first clip and which type of forest you think is in the second clip.
So please play the first clip for us. Thank you. And now onto the next clip. We hope you enjoyed listening to those sound and visual pieces, and now we are handing over to Dan.
Thank you. So we're going to have a bit of a panel discussion, and then if there's anybody who's got questions as well, again, as I say, please do raise your hand, and we'll get a boom mic around to you as well. But just to start off with, I mean, you recorded quite a lot of audio, didn't you? Sort of how much was it of the audio that you did record, Jenna?
So we actually recorded about 60,000 hours of audio, which is quite a lot. And if I'd have had to listen to all of that audio, even if I did it 7 days a week, 8 hours a day, and didn't stop to even write anything down, it would have taken about 22 years to listen to. So in a 4-year PhD, that definitely wasn't possible. So what we actually did is we formed a collaboration within Imperial with some very clever data scientists in the Department of Computing. And what they did is they trained a machine learning algorithm. So using 500 examples of the spider monkey that I collected in a pilot study, we gave it 500 examples of the call that we wanted it to learn. And then they trained a machine learning algorithm to actually detect those calls within the sound recordings. So instead of taking 22 years, it took about 4 weeks to run all of the sounds through this program. But the program did take 2 years to build. But luckily, now we've built this program for the spider monkey. The spider monkeys live all the way from Mexico down to Peru and Ecuador. So we're hoping that scientists will be able to use this across the whole range to study the spider monkey, which could change the way that this species is actually studied.
I was going to say, when looking at the map, spider monkeys may not necessarily observe the borders either, will they? So, of course, they'll go wherever they want to go.
Hopefully, if we remove the barriers, they'll go, yeah.
But with the same machine learning, would it work for another animal? Would you be able to sort of apply the methodology and what you've done and some of the programming that was being created around this, but apply it for a different creature?
Yeah, so there's people doing this. There's people like myself, acoustic specialists, who are doing this with different animals. So it's classically been done for whales and dolphins and bats for, I think, probably 10 or 20 years. But just recently, people are moving into sort of non-flying mammals. So we've just built another algorithm for the howler monkey, so the same study that we've just done with the spider monkey, we can now do the same with the howler monkey. Now we have this trained algorithm. So.
Fantastic. And why the spider monkey in the first place?
The spider monkey is actually a really important animal. So the spider monkey, it's probably the most sensitive species in the rainforest. So when we destroy an area, it'll be the first species to leave. And then when we start to restore areas, it'll be the last one to return. So any solutions that we could come up with to restore the rainforest and protect it for the spider monkey would technically have a cascade effect and work for multiple other species.
Thank you. We did have a question just here as well, if we could just get the boom mic just above you in a moment. And again, at home, if you've got a question, please do send it through.
Yeah, apologies if I didn't quite catch the name of the acoustic engineer. Earlier on, you mentioned that you have manipulated the recording to make the plantation sound worse. Is there not a danger of you imparting your interpretation of the dire situation? Not saying that it's not dire, but you are imparting your interpretation?
I think that was a question to Lou and I. We actually added the ghostly sounds to the plantation, so it would have actually made it sound like there was more there than there was. So we weren't taking anything away. We didn't change any of the background sound of the plantation. We didn't remove anything.
John, one of the things that you spoke about with the sounds is you kind of said on one hand they were wonderful and on another hand they were quite chilling. Could you expand on that a little bit more? Can you tell me a little bit more about your own listening? Because obviously you're not machine, so you've had to listen through quite a lot of this audio yourself. Tell me about some of the experiences you had listening to these sounds.
Well, the chilling aspect was how little there was on the plantations and the teak plantation, and looking at the spectrograms, you could just see in some of the frequency there was no sound at all, whereas in the untouched forest you could see different animals appearing in different bands all over the spectrogram.
And Lou, how about yourself? When you've been working on this project, how's it resonated with you personally?
Well, I was really interested to find out how Jenna really dealt with the sort of heavy burden of really understanding this horrendous problem through minute detail. So that was something I was really interested in talking to Jenna about. And for me, I was really surprised at how you could be transported to a different place just through sound, and particularly during the pandemic. And I really thought about how you can create sort of soundscapes that represent places, so maybe we don't need to travel to them when we can, or maybe when we can't in the future. It also really made me think about how I want my environment and my world and my planet to be filled with biodiversity and not with plantations.
I mean, Jenna, one of the things that John talked about was these photographs that you took. Can you tell me a bit more of the process of you going in, taking photographs? What were you looking for when you first walked in? Like, when was the first encounter that you had with the rainforest?
Probably about 6 years ago, a couple of years before my PhD, I went out there to work on a separate project, and that's how I ended up coming across this project. But the reason I always take photos when I go as well is because I think I really like putting sound and visuals together, and that's been my plan since the start, was to mix the acoustics with the visuals, because I think it's really powerful. So that's why I took so many pictures, and I actually had an art photography exhibition on the peninsula for children as well, using those images.
I mean, you've been working with children quite regularly this week as well. What are some of the reactions that they have to it?
I think the children they don't know. They don't have any of this information yet, and they perhaps don't even understand what a rainforest is, and they don't understand the link that we have here to the rainforest as well, and what we're actually doing. Maybe just a quick show of hands. Who's actually been to a rainforest? And so it's a small number of people, like quite a small, oh no, there's a few more. There's a slightly bigger percentage now, but it's still rather, I think, a small number of people who do have experience of the rainforest. I mean, how did you first come into, to experience rainforests yourself? It was just through my studies. Yeah. I wasn't lucky enough to go in any other capacity. But yeah, I spent probably 2 years collecting this data in the forest, so every day out in the forest.
And over those 2 years that you were out there, I mean, tell me about some of the things that you would change, you see change visually and also, you know, from an auditory sense as well. I know that you've sort of showed us those graphs. One of the questions I had was also, there were different graphs that had different colors as well. Do they represent different things as well?
Yeah, so the different colors on the graphs are different frequencies, so it depends how many frequencies that they pass over. But I think, yeah, for me, it was very difficult going into these plantations and seeing just no wildlife, especially when there are companies out there that are trying to claim that palm plantations are good for wildlife, and they make a lot of noise and people hear that. And unfortunately, when you go in yourself and you see there's nothing there. And it's really sad to know that these plantations didn't exist 20 years ago, and they're expected to double within the next 20 years. So it's hard to see those perfect forests with all the wildlife and know that maybe in 20 years' time they won't be there.
And what can we actually do in terms of responding to that? What are, you know, how does this research sort of figure into sort of a bigger picture in terms of what it can be used either governmentally or, you know, on a bigger scale to prevent that?
So I mean, on a small scale, we will be working with local partners in the area to do things like build bridges across road and restore different areas. So we are working with local NGOs and people within the wildlife department over there. So that's what we can do. That's what we as scientists can do over there. But there's a lot that we can do as people here as well. I think we always feel such a disconnection to nature and such a disconnection to the rainforest because we're so far away and we don't make that connection between what we do and what's going on there. But I think in terms of, for example, beef agriculture, the majority of the loss of the Amazon is for beef agriculture, and most of that is actually consumed outside of Latin America. It's consumed in countries like Europe and the US. And all of our pineapples, if you look on a label on a pineapple in the supermarket, your pineapples come from Costa Rica. And unfortunately, that's tearing down the forest there as well. And palm oil is in absolutely everything, and it is destroying the forests. Teak, for example, the teak plantations that are in this area, you'd never think it, but those teak plantations actually go to make the coffins that they put on the rivers when people die in India. So I think it's like the burials that go out onto the water.
I think this seems to be a recurring theme in some of the talks that we've seen today, where it's this idea where this one raw material is sort of taken from this place, transported thousands of miles to another location to be processed, and then transported to another location in order to be turned into something. And it's just this awareness that we need to have, this mindfulness that we need to have about what, you know, how all these things are being shipped around, moved around, just to create this one thing for us. I want to maybe see if we can kind of bring this into a local discussion as well. And so I've got, you know, John and Lou, you've worked with Margate, for example, so that's near the seaside. I wanted to kind of get an idea from you in terms of you're working with soundscapes and all that. What are some of the things that you've seen change within your own local landscape, and how we might be able to relate to this idea of how the environment is changing, how we can better support sustainability or better support nature and wildlife in our regions?
Yeah.
Well, so we live in Margate and we moved here about 4 or 5 years ago, and just the experience of being in a wildish landscape has really both transformed how we both work, and we're a lot more centered around sea life and ocean connectivity in our practices. There's a real disconnect, or can be a real disconnect here, between the absolute beauty of this coastline and also how it's treated in terms of even like the council's rubbish collection, which is really staggering if you see how much of this rubbish from, you know, all the houses and businesses in the area often ends up on the beaches and then subsequently in the water. And most recently, there have been lots of cases of raw sewage being put out into the water along this coastline from southeastern water, which has meant that humans haven't been allowed to swim in the water for many weeks at a time. But of course, the life systems that exist within these spaces have to continue living within that water. You know, they have no choice about it. So it's a real contrast between having this incredible experience of the landscape, but also being completely aware of how people treat it at the same time.
John, how about you in terms of maybe the power of sound to make us aware of these issues? I mean, we heard the two different clips and there was a very distinct difference between the two. But what is it about sound that kind of breaks through a barrier for people in terms of their understanding? They can see pictures, yes, but why sound? Why is sound important?
Well, using the where we live again as a sort of case study, we've been recording the sea using hydrophones, and you can hear the animals under the water. And most people don't even know they're there. You can hear the clicking sound of the shellfish, but then that gets wiped out every now and again by the sound of one of the dredgers that sits in the bay. And we've been trying to play this to people. And recently we had a project with Ramsgate, who had a sound festival. So we played that to the sound to the people, and no one knew that the sound was there. No one had even heard them, which obviously people don't go swimming around trying to listen to the animals, but we thought that was quite telling.
Sound really offers a window into another world that we don't experience otherwise, especially with underwater sound.
I mean, it's a privy sort of a window into a world that we don't normally get. We normally see. And there is a question just out of the back here as well.
Hi, I'm interested to learn what you've learned from working with each other. You know, we're here at the Great Exhibition Road Festival to talk about kind of how sciences and arts come together and how we benefit from each other. I'd be really interested to hear from you all, maybe something that you learned that you didn't expect to learn, or either about your topic or about the other person's topic.
Excellent question.
I think for me, I'd always had this image of what I wanted to produce by combining the sounds with the visuals, but I didn't know that they would do it in such an amazing way. I was planning on using the photographs and then the sounds, but the way they'd managed to connect the two together with all the little bubbles that come up on the screen, and how they'd actually managed to time that with the wildlife, that was incredible. And that was something I could have never done on my own. So they've taken an idea and they've taken something that science has produced, and then they've combined it with their skills and art in a way that people can really enjoy. And I think it's designed so it can be a complete immersive experience. So, you know, sitting on bean bags, lights down, relaxing in a room. And I think that, you know, that can really transport you. And especially one of the things I think this could be really useful for, the way they've produced it, is for mental health as well. I think it can be really useful for people.
One of the things that I learned from working with Jenna and talking to her about how the animals are reliant on each other, and how removing one of them can change the whole biodiversity of an area. It made me think that some of the things that you do every day that you might not think have a knock-on effect can change the entire environment. From every species is connected, and that was one of the things that we're then thinking about for other projects we're working on. And it also reminded us of something we've learned since then about the extinction of moas in New Zealand, and how that had a knock-on effect of getting rid of the Haast eagle. And we wouldn't have realised that was connected all over the world without working with Jenna.
Yeah. for me, it was really incredible to really understand Jenna's research, because I had no idea that plantations, particularly sustainable plantations, were having this effect. And it really brought home to me how the choices that I make literally every day affect the existence and the experience of these different amazing creatures that live in Costa Rica, and of course places all across the world.
Thank you. Have we got any final questions from the room? Oh, one more. Yes, you ask excellent questions, so I'll be happy to point the mic to you again.
You've painted quite a bleak picture so far. Tell us something to cheer us up before we go.
I'm going to go in reverse this time. So Lou, John, and then Jenna.
Okay. Well, something that's positive that's come out of it is getting to know these particular animals, having the privilege of being in this moment in history when they exist as well, and we get to understand them, and we have the opportunity to do something to make their lives easier and continue existing. So yeah, that's it from me.
And for me, I suppose knowing that there are people like Jenna who are working on these projects will give us a chance and show us exactly what we need to do to make a difference, rather than other options that we've been given. We know that there are people working really hard to save the animals and put them in front of our needs.
Yeah, I think the picture does sound bleak, but it's not all terrible. So the governments around the world, they're having COP26 at the moment, and there is going to be lots more commitments made to protected areas. So I think 10 years ago they agreed that they would protect 17% of the terrestrial Earth. Now they're going to push that to 30%. So I think governments are waking up. There's certain people that are really pushing it out there so that they are waking up and they're having to do things. I think, well, maybe before COVID, we were using a lot less plastics and a lot more reusable materials. And I think in time that will come back again as well. So there are improvements, and you can see little ones everywhere. And it's just going to take a lot of those little steps to eventually get us to where we need to be.
Fantastic. Well, I think I'm going to come round again in the same order that I just did before. So Lou, John, and then Jenna. I'm going to ask you for your final thoughts to leave everyone to take away from today. But if I could just sort of spend a few moments just reflecting on the whole of today, across all the talks today, I think there have been quite a lovely few connections that you kind of feel through the 4 talks that we've had today, who Mimi, who's in the corner here, has wonderfully put together for us today. So we started off the day with a piece of music, 17 composers creating music that responded to the natural environment, helping us to understand our own natural environment through the means of music and through an emotive means. And then we went on to talking with 2 craftspeople who are using recycled materials in order to make us aware about the sort of usage that we've been doing, this idea that we are just, we pick up something, we use it, we're done with it, we throw it away. So they're trying to make us aware about all of that, the idea of all the resources being used to ship and move and create. And then most recently, we had a group of poets. We had about 15 poets using the spoken word, but the power of the spoken word as a way to enact change. And they're going to go off to COP26 as well. I'm going to be presenting to politicians, trying to encourage that change, encouraging us to look at these big issues that relate to the environment, that relate to climate change, that relate to the effect on habitats, and how we can use art and science together, as you've heard from John and Lou and Jenna as well, how you can use it to raise awareness and to use that awareness to help enact change, because we can all go away and each feel that we have a something that we can do, something that we can do that will affect the overall picture. You know, as I think John was sort of saying that, you know, these little things that happen in one country can affect another and another. So there is that sort of butterfly effect. But that's just my reflections across the day. You know, I think it's really waking me up to everything as well. And what I love hearing from the three of you is this idea that this massive amount of data, 60,000 hours of audio, you know, we can process it and now use that data to actually make change for good as well. So if I can invite my speakers to kind of give us our last thoughts for the session and for the whole day as well. So Lou, John, and then Jenna, please.
Okay. Well, my final thought is that I would like to invite you and everybody in the audience to look at the complexity of all of the creatures around you with wonder.
Yeah. I'd like, I mean, drawing on the last question, I think I'd like everyone to realise that it's not hopeless and that we need to keep working to change things and not expect someone else to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think for me as well, it's just about the connectedness, which I think we all fail to see on a daily basis. I think we go about our lives and we don't make that connection between what we're doing here and the impacts that's having all over the world on not just wildlife, but on people as well. So I think if we can all think about that in our daily lives, then we can make small changes person by person.
Magnificent. Thank you. Thank you very much. Big warm round of applause to all our speakers. Thank you. For those of us who are here in person, in front of you, there should be a little sheet that has a QR code. Please do scan that QR code and complete the survey just to let us know how fantastic our three speakers have been. 5 stars at least would be great. It's out of 5, but you can always put more. And for those of you watching at home, there is a link that's just been dropped in. So if you could do that, that'd be great, because it allows us to pull together speakers like this and do these fantastic events. Great Exhibition Road Festival. We'd love to do it again, and we'd love to just improve on everything that we do as well. So please do fill out the survey. But as a benefit, there's also potentially a £50 voucher in it for you as well. So there's a benefit for you too. I think that's all that I need to say. Thank you so much to everyone for coming in. It's lovely to see you all, and it's lovely to see you at home as well. Thank you. Final round of applause for our speakers.